Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. This week is a nice little closer to our Aquarius season. It's the end of the Saturn ruled sign marathon as we have moved through Capricorn season and Aquarius season. They're both ruled by Saturn. With Saturn being in Pisces, these have been really intense, deep months for pretty much everyone I know. And we're moving towards the end of it. However, we're going to continue to have kind of this vibe as we go into Pisces season because there's going to be all of those conjunctions with Saturn. We've already had the Venus conjunction, and then we're going to get the Mercury conjunction and the Sun conjunction in Pisces season. So just we are kind of moving out of the Saturn season in this last week, kind of into a weirdly Saturnian season in Pisces season. But in this week, it's kind of like we're doing a bit of flushing. Uranus is really activated. We get this new moon in Leo. Mercury shifts into Pisces right before the sun goes into Pisces next week. So it's sort of not really a purge, but a moment of reflection and sitting with things kind of in, I don't want to say opposition, but in contrast to this new moon in Leo. That is also going to be dealing with Uranian things because the day after we have that sun square, we end up having that new moon, and obviously that kind of gets pulled in. So we start off on Monday with Mercury square Uranus. I think something that's important to remember, so Mercury is in Aquarius, Uranus is in Taurus. We're looking at a fixed sign square. So there is resistance to change, there is resistance to innovation and moving forward. However, it's also good to remember that while Uranus is about kind of this uncontrollable chaos and progress and massive innovations and shifts, Uranus is also an old god, an ancient titan. And when we come into these squares in Aquarius to this Taurus Uranus, what are the things that at one point in our life were radical and new that have become stagnant and that have become fixed and ancient? It's a reminder to constantly refresh your knowledge and be open to new and wonderful things. Just because we had a massive insight and burst of growth, especially at the beginning of last year when we had all of those Uranus conjunctions in Taurus, you know, how have those things maybe calcified or solidified? And where can we continue to feed in and bring in new energy and truly embody Uranus in a healthy way rather than maybe becoming a grim statue in the desert? Reminds me, I can't remember who wrote the poem right in this moment, but the poem that has the great Ozymandias, whose image lies partially buried in the sand, comes to mind. You know, Uranus is the fool, Uranus is progressive, but sometimes we get so attached to the idea of being progressive that we get fixed in our ways. And this is an opportunity to bring in the energy of the fool, to challenge our own stagnations and frustrations and desires, and really take stock of what's happening with this Mercury square. Really ask ourselves how we're developing our beliefs and our thought patterns and the way that we exist. And also, have we, just kind of let things fall by the wayside? If we planted our flag and stopped learning or stopped innovating and changing. And it's not a time to punish ourselves or to, make ourselves feel bad about where we are, but it is a time to say, how can I continue to shift and grow and change? I don't think, especially since we're still under the Mars retrograde, that is necessary for us to be like, I'm changing everything. Maybe that's how it works out for you. But it's more about that recognition, that sitting in discomfort and allowing that discomfort to alchemize and um, teach us something new and wonderful. And also knowing that to constantly learn and to constantly change is discomfort. And as someone who has a lot of mutable energy and fixed energy, it's difficult because it is this push and pull between needing to be a measure of towering strength with deep integral flexibility and movement. So bring something mutable into your life. We do have the nodes in a mutable sign, which I do think is helpful in this time. Obviously, it's not connected. Um, well, it actually is. We're actually I don't often use sextiles. I'm actually going to integrate them soon. It was when I was doing short form. But what we're actually dealing with now that I have let this percolate is we're actually dealing with something interesting where Pisces, that north node, is and my brain just died. God, wake up, brain, wake up. Yeah, Pisces is sextile to Uranus. And so we have that north node actually invigorating and challenging and exciting Uranus. So it's important not to forget where that is. My brain died because I was like, Aquarius is not in sextile to Pisces. Are you insane? I often question myself with a dyslexic brain. Anyways, so there is this deep ability to change, this invigoration. It's also important to note that these moments in time aren't fixed. We're continuing to move towards stuff. We're being swept towards eclipse season. Obviously, it doesn't start officially when we enter Pisces season because those eclipses are happening in Pisces and Aries. But we are getting swept towards that. So that North Node activating and kind of ping ponging off of Uranus brings an extra measure to this. You know, it is uncomfortable, but it is time. It is not easy, but it is time. Um, and I think if we had an aura reading recently, and the reader, um, the message they had for me was radical trust, and I think that's what this square is. It is that needing to sit with the fear and the resistance to this shift and the wanting to be like, I've done so much already. And it's not to minimize all that has been done, but to recognize that we can do more, but we don't have to belabor the point. We don't have to force ourselves. There is a flow in working in North Node energy. And with it in Pisces, one of the benefits is this ability of limitlessness. So within your finiteness, recognize that your soul is limitless in this Mercury square. I know I was gotten convoluted in this Mercury square because we are getting, trines are really beautiful, sextiles are lovely, but we don't get traction without a square. This is a fire starter. This is you having to come up against what innovation means to you, what change means to you. And I think, especially with Uranus and Taurus, it's not going to be the way that we think. Um, Change is going to be turned on its head this week. Change might mean resting. Change might mean slowing down. Change might mean trusting the universe rather than focusing on ourselves as this constant activation. Change might be integrating yourself into a group where you become a small part of a larger machine rather than trying to do everything on your own. Um, and this is a theme that kind of gets carried through because on Wednesday, the 11th, we get the Sun square Uranus because we've just, they're really close together right now. We just had that Kazemi. So we've got that Sun square Uranus, and it is a continuation. So we've done the kind of thought process, we've kicked off that mental journey, and now we have to come in with not really the action per se, but the engine that will eventually get started or that is started with the sun in Aquarius, coming up against what is my role in all of this? What is my place in the bigger picture? Fixed signs are very much collective signs. They have a lot to do with really big, massive energy cycles. That's kind of the nature of them being in the middle of things all the time. So who are you as an individual in a part of this great change? Who are you as one spark in the midst of a fire that is being built in the world, in the hearts of people who want change and want to see their hopes and dreams come into reality? And it's really important that we sit with this because this is kind of also the theme of this new moon. This new moon is square Uranus. What is your part in the collective story? It's not new moon, it's a full moon. Me being all over the place. It's not new moon, it's full moon. Anyways, what is your part in that? And how can you release the need to control? Release the need to know what's going on and to police other people's behavior and to make sure that, everything is aligned with your values. Now, obviously there are some values that should never be set aside, human rights, things like that, but when working in a group, there is a measure of compromise. It's not always going to be done the way you want it to be done. And can we release that need for control? Can we release, you know, control is the enemy of innovation, not regulation. I do think we do have to keep people in check sometime, but control, um, you know, trying to force things into place, that's not how innovation works. That's not how shifts and change works. This full moon is about releasing control. With the full moon in Leo, it's also about releasing the need to be seen as an individual, to be seen as a standalone person. Doesn't mean that you're not individuated, doesn't mean that you're not unique, but to release this need to be an island. Um, and it's funny because it's in Leo. And while not all Leos are attention hogs, all Leos like to be seen for who they are and for their unique qualities. Any planet you have in Leo desires visibility, desires, they're like a sunflower. They need to be near the sun, and that requires a level of visibility. So, as we kind of sit, you know, this extended Mercury square, this extended Sun square because of this full moon, it is about the ability to be individual and unique and also not need that to be at the cost of everyone else's individuality and uniqueness. There's a way to be individual and unique in a group. And we're often told, that's not how it works. But it is how it works. Like, it is possible. Now, yes, the group needs to be amenable to individuation and to innovation into those groups, but that's also part of the story, finding those groups that you work in well, that you function in well. I will also do a longer video on the new moon, but it is about this: who am I in the collective? What is my role in the world as I am now? What are my gifts? What are my talents? What are my skills? Well, that's great to Uranus. How can I take it a step further and innovate with the things that I have? And I'm not talking about massive innovations. I'm talking about little tiny baby steps because you are one little grain of sand on a beach with a bunch of other grains of sand, all beautiful, all unique, all serving a purpose. Um, and then at the end of the week on Friday, we end up with Mercury going into Pisces. And this is a shift, as we know, it's kind of double trouble with Mercury in Pisces because Mercury is exalted and domicile in Virgo. It's very elevated place. So in that opposition, it is detriment and fall almost, all at the same time. It is time to communicate with our thoughts. It is time to communicate wordlessly. People with, Pisces, Mercury's, it's about finding people who speak that same language. It's about finding your niche. Your communication might not be generally accepted or understood, but it can be valued. Not for the minutia, but for its expansiveness. Which the reason it's in detriment there is because practically, if you're looking at communication, you do want it to be valued for the minutia, for the small details. But in Pisces, it's about, music and the language of the cosmos and, wordless sound. It's about pure feeling that communicates rather than words that translate feelings, um, which is both really beautiful and also a little terrifying and can make communication difficult. Um, Pisces, Mercuries are a great time to write poetry. They're a great time to create art. They're a great time to communicate ideas that you have that are beyond words. You just have to be okay with being creative with the way that you do that. Um, and it's kind of the cherry on top to this week. We have kind of such literal expressions in the fixed signs in Aquarius to Taurus with that square to Uranus. Um, but there is this really nice kind of release after we've done all of that kind of minute air sign work to move into this Pisces Mercury and kind of release um, all of that, mental tension that we've been carrying with that square to Uranus. Um, Not that it's not good to sit with that square to Uranus, but there is a nice kind of flush before we enter into Pisces season, which is on the 18th. So I think that's a Tuesday. Anywho's, my loves, this is this week. It is the time to sit with who you are and what is your place in the world and the community. It is important in this to not limit what the value of your gifts are. Not everyone is meant for the front lines. Not everyone is an aggressor. A lot of, people who are needed are caregivers, nurturers, people who are behind the scenes managing things, people who, um, even your own spiritual practice in the world today is a beautiful act of resistance and a beautiful act of trust in the universe in times that are difficult. Um, so do not discount or diminish what you can innovate and what you can use to help your community. Um, and part of breaking away from late stage capitalism and oligarchy and whatever this is that we're dealing with now is to stop using their value system. And a part of that is to stop quantifying yourself within the system that they have. Even if you're like me, who's disabled and will never be able to march on the front lines because my body just won't handle it, that doesn't make you invaluable. That doesn't make you worthless. We all have our place. We all have our position of power. Um, and it's time to break the value system that tells us that we don't and that minimizes the beautiful and good things that we do and tries to say that energy work's not that great, or um, manifesting or spell work is just really not doing that much, or even online advocating online, which a lot of disabled people do because we are barred from either through health issues or through lack of inclusion, we are barred from physical spaces. Don't let people tell you that that is not good enough, that that is not valuable. Obviously, we need to, do our best to diversify the platforms we're on, but for some of us, that's not possible, and that is fine. And removing these harmful ideas of what is good and what is bad is a part of this Uranus Sun square, a part of this Mercury Sun square. We are removing the binary in this square as an agender person. Very appealing to me. But you don't have to be agender to remove the binary. You get to be whatever you want when there is no binary. And that can include being a part of some kind of binary. Um, so, yeah, that is this week. Start to dismantle these systems in your mind, in your essence, in your soul. And that work, though it seems very small on a large scale, will permeate out into your community, into that beach full of other little grains of sand. And that is how we make change.